Hello my dear friends, and welcome back to another Andor breakdown. So we just got episode 10 One Way Out, and this, in my opinion, was the best episode of the series so far. I usually save my rating for the end of the video, but I'm just going to tell you flat out right off the bat, this for me was peak Star Wars television, and I'm giving it a 10 out of 10. That's right, full marks. This was the most fast-paced of any episode since the heist on Aldhani, and I'm so glad that the prison escape was this week, because it means going into next week, into the first of the two-part finale, the setup for season 2 begins, and we really have no idea what's going to happen, guys. But regardless, I think it's going to be huge. Now with this episode, the plot was very straightforward, so I want to focus on the themes. The two recurring ones throughout episode 10 was sacrifice and rebellion, and that applies across all three protagonists, Cassian, Luthen and Mon Mothma. Let's go through each one, starting with the prison break. Even though Kino was the floor manager and has been a commanding figure amongst the prisoners until now, Cassian really proved his mettle in this episode and took charge in a position of leadership. Without that, there would have been no escape, and I believe this is a crucial part of his character arc that will later materialize in him being a captain for the rebellion. At the end of last week's episode, after Olaf died and the doctor told them what happened on level 2, Kino had the realization that they were never getting out of there. The Empire had no intentions of letting prisoners go, but rather they were transferred to other levels or even other prisons. And so at the start of this episode, while Cassian is already mentally prepared to escape, and while Kino does get there too, it takes him a while to come to terms with it. He's full of fear, disbelief and anger. The acting on Andy Serkis's part was incredible, by the way, to be able to convey these emotions with very few words, especially before he tells the other prisoners the plan. Now the intensity of the escape itself was exactly what you want in a spy thriller. Given that Tony Gilroy told us that lots of characters were gonna die, it's no surprise then that a few men didn't make it. I also love the way that Cassian instilled a sense of rebellion into Kino. When they reached the control room on level 8, he was afraid to make a speech, but he did find the strength in him, thanks to Andor, to do so. This episode was also, in my opinion, the perfect precursor to Rogue One, showing us that Cassian and Melshi, who eventually become part of the Rebel Alliance, have the qualities to be leaders. One of course becomes a great captain and the other a sergeant respectively. And I don't know about you guys, but I thought Kino's speech had a lot of similarities to Ezra's broadcast in Rebels. Both are inspired by rebellion to resist the Empire's rule. Now one line in particular where Kino talks about sentencing and being innocent resembles when Ezra says, "We have been called criminals but we're not." I love the world building and how the series is showing us that rebellion has been sparked across the galaxy and not just amongst planets and characters we're familiar with. Now when it came time to make that leap into the ocean of Narkina 5, Kino says he can't swim. So unfortunately, my dear friends, he got left behind, and I presume he was later killed by those officers who were hiding from the stampede of prisoners. Now at the end of the episode, we see Andor and Melshi successfully make it to land. We don't know where they go from here, but I guess we're going to find out next week. And I think we're also going to see some massive tie-ins to other parts of the Star Wars universe in the two-part finale. What's really fascinating to me is how far they must have swam. After all, those prisons were pretty far away from any sort of land. A big question now is, how do Cassian and Melshi make it off planet? While there are no clear answers at this stage, one hint might be found in the concept art for the series. In the original Andor sizzle reel, there is concept art of a wounded Andor in an A-wing. He looks battered up, the glass is shattered on the ship, and I suspect there might be another chase, and if you pardon the pun, Andor and Melshi just have to wing it. Let's wait and see. And so now, let's talk about Mon Mothma. In the last episode, Tay told her that the only way they could transfer large amounts of money without suspicion from the Empire is if they go with a certain banker called Davos Golden, who Mon Mothma calls a thug. Well, in this episode we finally meet him, and he is as insufferable as you can imagine. While the conversation in part focused on Mon Mothma's charity event, the underlying theme was that of rejecting conformity and standing up to traditions of arranged marriage that are actually quite harmful. Mon Mothma herself was married off at a very young age, and instead of a fee for helping her, Davos suggests that teenage children meet, the implication being an eventual arranged marriage. But Mon, having experienced them firsthand, does not agree with such Chandrilan customs, and she wants to effectively break that cycle with her own kids. But Davos says boundaries can be liberating, and that their positions of privilege make decisions for them. Something else that Mon wants to break free from when she eventually steps down from the Senate and forms the Rebel Alliance. Mon's life is about to change dramatically, and Andor is showing us everything she sacrificed and gave up in the name of being part of something that brings freedom and peace back to the galaxy. Now, as we suspected from the TV spots, Supervisor Lonnie Young is a double agent, one of Luthen's men and a rebel spy who's been working at the ISB for 6 years. But the stress and the high-pressure nature of the role and towing the line for so long has finally gotten to him, so he signalled an emergency meeting which Claire mentions, and then we see him walking the lower levels of Coruscant, communicating with Luthen, until they speak face to face. What's made clear in this dialogue is that Young has a family, and he wants to give up being a spy. He wants to throw in the towel and lead a simple life. But Luthen, dressed in black, dark robes, tells him that it's not an option because he made a pledge to him, similar to what he says to Mon Mothma in earlier episodes. It seems that in this way, Luthen has a manipulative side to him, which we saw through Claire when she told Vel to find Andor. These spies and agents who've worked under him know too much, and in Lonnie's case, he's trapped. When he speaks of sacrifice, he asks Luthen what he's sacrificed by comparison. Stellan Skarsgård gives a fantastic performance with a speech about giving up a peaceful life, finding love, and he reveals that he started 15 years prior, so just after Order 66. The visual imagery of this scene is striking, and as an audience we have even more questions about Luthen's background, his story and who he is. Young is given no choice, and Luthen activates the lift for him to depart. Things are really about to pop off. I can't wait to see what's in store in episodes 11 and 12, but the pacing has dramatically sped up, and I think it'll be one of those endings where we can't wait for season 2, but we're gonna have to be patient because it won't be another 2 years until we get the second season. As I say, my dear Mandalorians, this episode gets a solid 10 out of 10 from me. There was very little Dedra in this one, no Cyril and no Vel, a brief cameo on Ferrex by Cinta, who's being very careful and witnessing the Empire's takeover. Now it also seems as though Marva is not taking her pills. We see a local called Jezzy who calls the doctor in, and apparently his prescription is putting Marva off her food. They enter the Andor residence before Cinta witnesses all of this. I'm sure she's going to appear in the next episode too. I hope they give us more Cinta and Vel, and I really hope neither of them die. To my mind, every episode with Luthen has been a highlight of season 1 so far, and I really hope we see more of him going forward. Pretty much the only two things from the trailers we haven't seen yet are the uprising on Ferrex and the space battle where Luthen uses his kyber crystal powered ship to blast Imperials. The show is about to get insane. The acting was amazing, the directing by Toby Haynes, another killer episode, bring on the 2-part finale. But share your thoughts in the comments down below guys, what did you make of episode 10? If you enjoyed this breakdown, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and in case you missed it, in yesterday's video we had some very juicy Mandalorian updates. But until the next one my dear friends, may the Force be with you always.